Michael, if you're reading this letter, it means that either the mail is late or it is August 8th and you have not gotten any phone calls from me. I know we're not on good terms right now, but you're the only person I trust to not just take the money I enclosed and not do anything. If it is August 8th and I haven't called, that means that an experiment of mine has gone wrong and I need you to come and help me out. Please take the money as an advance payment. I can give you more when you show up. 1. Go to the Last Chance Inn in John Day, Oregon. 2. Room 213 will be booked in my name through the 15th. Tell the owner your name and they should let you in. If they don't, you'll have to break in. 3. Make sure that the TV and bed are exactly where they are in the drawer of the room I stuck in the envelope. Do not move anything around or place your luggage in the room. 4. Make sure that your left hand is palm up in the correct spot in the bed. It's marked in the drawing, and that nothing else is on the bed. 5. With your right hand, grab into something sturdy that you can get a good grip on. The radiator pipe might work. 6. Remain alert. 7. Now for the weird part. If you did this right, at around 21:59, you should feel someone grab your left wrist very hard and try to pull you. At this point, follow the steps below as fast as possible. 8. Close your eyes and hold on tight. Do not try to see what is grabbing you or allow yourself to be pulled. 9. Grab the wrist of the hand pulling you as hard as you can. Do not let go no matter what you hear. 10. Pull that wrist as far as possible. Do not stop pulling or let go of your anchor. 11. That's it. If it worked, you'll know it. This probably sounds like a lunatic wrote it, and it might not be wrong to think that. I'm sorry about what happened last year. I don't expect you to forgive me. Ed. That was the letter that I found waiting in my office yesterday, in a wrinkled, taped-up envelope alongside $300 cash and a crude sketch of a floor plan. Ed was the sort of person who would enthusiastically jump into a wood chipper to test his new homemade anti-wood chipper suit, and more unfortunately, was also the sort who couldn't fathom why others wouldn't want to be the control group. I doubted that those last lines of the letter had any real meaning. More likely, Ed had read them in a book on how humans express regret, and thought that they might persuade me to come. I threw the letter in the recycle bin and resumed typing. Jack's smiling face popped over the gray wall of my cubicle. Seeing him under the bright fluorescent lights of the office never failed to make me wish for a power outage. Hey, Willis wanted someone to volunteer to come in this weekend. I told him that you weren't busy, since, you never are. Under the desk, I discreetly pulled the letter out of the recycling bin. Actually, Jack, I'm afraid I won't be able to make it. I'm visiting an old friend this weekend. John Day, as I soon discovered, was an exceedingly annoying location to get to. It was squeezed into a river valley approximately 80 miles west of the highway in eastern Oregon, which placed it about 300 miles away from anywhere worth visiting. Besides pine trees, farms, and Smokey Bear signs warning me that the entire state was a tinderbox, the only entertainment I could find was one of these seemingly omnipresent religious radio stations, a grandfatherly voice conning idiots out of their money. And remember, we are sinners at heart, and the path to redemption leads through holy fire. But all of you, my listeners, all of you can be saved. All may walk the path of the righteous. All it takes is to open your hearts to the Lord, to face the fire without fear, to accept judgment and beg forgiveness. And of course, to donate generously to the station. Seriously, on a more positive note, the long drive did give me plenty of time to think about the contents of the letter. Even for something Ed had written, the letter was by all accounts bizarre. Usually, Ed's request had involved me unwittingly purchasing and transporting chemicals that I strongly suspected he was no longer allowed to have. This, on the other hand, sounded more like an occult ritual than a science experiment. By the time I reached the town's welcome sign, I placed 90% odds on him just wanting me out here for some other reason, and 10% odds of him jumping out of the closet like a maniac at 10 p.m. My resigned annoyance turned to worry, and then when the motel owner confirmed Ed's booking and showed me a room 213, he swore the room had not been opened since Ed's arrival 3 days prior, but it appeared that it had never been used at all. No scientific experiment, no explosives, not so much as a single article of clothing, and no Ed to be found anywhere, even in the traditional monster hangouts inside the closet and under the bed. I was now faced with the very real possibility of actually following through with this, whatever it was. Just think of the money, I muttered to myself, flopping onto the bed. For all of his faults, Ed had never failed to pay well. Something crinkled under the pillow. I lifted it up and took a look. A half-torn sheet of notebook paper, half fallen behind the bed. The top had perforations where it had been torn off of a binder. One side was blank, but the other had the word convergences at the top and a chart below. 2 columns, 3 rows before the page ended in a tear. I read them to myself under my breath. 120-0730, 222-0030, 210-1645. I could make out the top of 213 in the first column below that, but the tear had erased the bottom of the number and presumably its corresponding 4 digits. A green circle had been drawn around that row. I stuffed the note in my pocket. Best not to think too hard about what Ed wrote down. Hours later, with several drinks inside me and my luggage stored safely in my car, I found myself sitting on the floor of room 213, watching Pirates of the Caribbean on some godforsaken rural TV station. To fit my hand into the positions that Ed had drawn on the diagram, I had sandwiched myself awkwardly between the bed and the wall. My left hand was laying on the bed, twisted palm up, and the right was next to the radiator. At least the awkward pose would keep me from falling asleep. The bedside clock read 9:58 p.m., and Jack Sparrow was just stepping off of his dinghy when I noticed a faint blue glow in the peripheral vision and felt something brush my wrist. I had no sooner closed my eyes than something grabbed me so hard, it felt like my forearm was about to shatter. The floor fell away beneath me and I began to sink through what felt like tar, my left arm being dragged downward and my body following behind. Even through my closed eyelids, I could see blue flashes. I began to hear things, whispers that wrapped around my head from one ear to another, far slower than sound should. Sounds of laughter. I was not afraid. So easy now to let myself be dragged down. I could scarcely remember what I had been doing. Something about pirates. I felt my right hand slide across something. The radiator pipe. My senses flooded back to me. I put the pipe in a white-knuckled grip with my right hand, with the vice grip still on my wrist. Moving my left hand was agony, but I managed to find and grab what felt like an arm. I pulled with all my might and felt a weight moving towards me slowly, picking up speed as I pulled harder. The blue flashes turned to red and the whispers stopped sounding joyful. The waves turned to roaring flames and the laughter grew cruel, pounding in the back of my head like hammer blows. I felt the skin on my wrist begin to tear as the grip on it grew impossibly tighter. I tried to scream, but the pounding was so loud that I didn't know if I did. Something shifted. Some cord holding the weight back snapped, and whatever I was pulling flew past me, as I nearly smacked myself in the face with my newly freed left arm. The flashes stopped, and I heard one last whisper as I opened my eyes. Ed's voice. Sorry. I had no idea what I had expected to see when I woke up, but I was still disappointed. The room was still empty and quiet. I was lying on the bed, except for me slowly getting up and nothing moved. The TV was off and the clock face was dark. I sighed with Jack's face 800 miles away. A power outage was significantly less useful to me. Without the ceiling light, The only illumination was an eerie orange glow filtering through the curtains and illuminating the dust in the air. More dust than I remembered. Much more. How long had I been wherever I was? First thing was first, though. I went to the bathroom and found, much to my relief, that the tap still worked. After a drink from the faucet and a truly legendary piss, I stepped out of the door. The light of a setting sun blinded me as I stared across the parking lot, deserted save for my car. Even I had to admit that the pine forests and the rolling hills were rather pretty. Less pretty was the fact that I didn't see a single other person, a car, or a lit window in the entire town. It had been evacuated. The air smelled vaguely of smoke, but I could see no impending wildfire. I walked to my car and headed for the road back to the interstate. I still couldn't believe that no one had bothered to check the motel notice on my car. And then again, I still wasn't sure what had happened for most of the day at least, if the sun was setting again. Evacuating a town, even a tiny place like this one, it had to take longer than that. I added kill Ed to my to-do list. Right after, leave without encountering the reason the town is empty. And drugging me and leaving me to maybe literally die in a fire was a new low even for him. It had to have been drugs, right? No other explanation. The sun had finished setting as I drove back east through the forest. My headlights, now the only illumination on the road. There was still no sign of a fire, not even a glow above the trees. I should have felt relieved, safe even. I had plenty of gas to get back to the highway, but there was still something off. I hadn't seen anyone or anything on the road. No fire trucks, no evacuation route signs, not even a speed limit sign. The road had been totally empty. Now, I would never describe myself as much of a social person, but I would have killed to see some sign of life right now. I turned the radio on, but even the AM channels were playing nothing but static. I was so lost in my own worries that I almost peed my pants when the radio came to life again, with that same Jesus crap as before. The dash clock read 10:14 p.m. Shouldn't this old guy be in bed by now? And as we wrap things up for tonight, we've got time for one more call. Listeners, please open your hearts for... An ear-splitting blast of static came from the radio, accompanied by a throb in my head. The same feeling from the motel room. My fingers scrambled as I spun the volume knob down, but the broadcast did not go quiet. As I frantically switched my gaze back and forth between the road and the radio, flashes of orange appeared in the trees, keeping pace with my car and disappearing when I tried to get a better look. The grandfatherly voice of the preacher came back, chuckling like he had just heard an old joke. As our caller has gently reminded us, we collect more than just donations at this station. Now I know I like to go on and on about redemption, about how all sins can be paid in fire. But it is all too often that we forget there is a line across which no soul may travel and still hope to see paradise. The voice became deathly quiet. I listened with growing unease. A line across which the Lord of Ash claims all. My faithful, our caller has informed us that someone has paid the ultimate price tonight to try and escape our Lord's justice, and that payment does not yet realize that he is in our Lord's realm. The voice became a bit more cheerful, chuckling again. My faithful, our payment is heading east through the forest, and I think we should give him a warm welcome. The radio went dead again. I checked my mirrors, nothing. I accelerated anyway. I didn't like the sound of being a payment, especially for this creepy old fart. That's how it worked in horror movies, right? The country preacher running some kind of dungeon out of the church basement. Yeah, no thanks. I tore around a bend, drifting into the other lane and feeling the tires nearly lose their grip on the roadway. I forced myself to take a deep breath and let off the gas as I finally hit a straight section of pavement. In the distance, just at the edge of my headlight's reach, someone was standing in the center of the road. As I approached, slowly and reflexively, I realized that the figure was charcoal black even in my lights. My head started to throb again. I couldn't have been more than 100 feet away, almost stopped, when the figure began sprinting towards me. I could see its face by the time I was able to stop, and then it flung itself onto the hood. It was human, or at least it had been. It had horrifically burned skin, little more than black flakes held together by some unnatural force, with boiling pus oozing and hissing through the gaps. Empty caverns where eyes should have been. A glowing orange maw behind perfect white teeth. The entire car jolted as I slammed it into reverse, 2 black hands leaving bubbling paint and scorch marks on the hood as I accelerated out of the creature's grasp. It ran after me, far faster than any person should have been able to run, barely slower than the car. And this is the part where an action hero would pull a J-turn and say something cool. I didn't know how to do either of those things, so I reversed down the road for a half mile until the creature was out of sight. I pulled over and took stock of my options, forward or back, town or forest, possible death by monster or possible death by fire. Not a great set of options. With a boom, the roof of the car caved in. 2 footprints pressed into it. The temperature skyrocketed as I floored the gas pedal, struggling to see with the roof now pressing into my shoulder. The acceleration failed to remove the monster from the roof. Instead, there was a horrible screech as a black claw tore through the metal and grazed my shoulder. My shirt smoldered. I felt my skin cook under it. Another hand reached in and began to tear the hole wider. The radio came to life again as I struggled to stay on the road. "You have sinned. You will burn, and the Lord of Ash will." I put my fist through the front of the radio, surprised at my own strength and anger. Screw the Lord of Ash, whoever he was. Up ahead, a branch hung low over the road's shoulder. As a boiling black hand grabbed for my face, I passed under it. With a howl, the creature left the top of my car, the tree igniting behind me. I saw more orange flashes, the creature's mouths through the trees. They were making no effort to hide, trying to keep pace with the car. Speed was my only defense left. As I left the trees and re-entered the fields around the town, I saw the orange glow of the spreading fire crest the trees in my mirrors. Not going back that way. I tore back into town with my gas gauge hovering on empty. The creatures were all around now, watching from the windows of the empty shops and sprinting across the rooftops. And they had the numbers to jump on the ruined roof and drag me out, but they didn't. The wildfire would finish the job. The flames were the height of mountains now, surrounding the town completely and blotting out the stars with smoke. I had one plan left, and it was a long shot. As I tore back into the motel parking lot and jumped out of the car, I noted the time on the dash clock, 12:36 a.m. Double-checking Ed's note from my pocket, I ran upstairs and threw open the door of room 222. I almost cried with relief. There was a blue glow on the bed. I dove for it and felt a hand. I grabbed that hand harder than anything I'd ever grabbed in my life, digging in with my nails as it tried to pull away. The temperature of the room skyrocketed as one of the burned men appeared in the doorway behind me, its hideous face twisted into a snarl. As my feet singed under a blackened hand, I closed my eyes and pulled even harder. The hand let go of my legs as I rose through a sea of red and then blue, and then onto the bed of room 222. Her name was Sarah. Her driver's license said that she was 27, and her still-running laptop said that she had a husband and was staying in room 222 of the Last Chance Inn while on the way to visit her parents. I thought about calling her husband, but I decided against it. Like, what would I even say? "Hey, I'm Michael. Sorry I sent your wife to hell. Maybe you can get a new one." No, the police would probably do a more tactful job. Who knows? Maybe she'll figure it out too and pull in some other guests so she can escape. Or maybe not. The front desk lady was a bit concerned about my burn marks and painful limp, but she also handed me an envelope. I told her that I had been in a grilling accident before I left, and she seemed to buy it. The envelope just read, "Mike, open immediately," on the outside. I wanted to sit in my car to read it, but my car was gone from the parking lot. Maybe it was still in hell. I opened the envelope and a set of BMW keys and a thick stack of $100 bills fell out, with a note visible still inside. That was when I noticed the brand new X6 in the parking lot. I sighed and I loaded my luggage. Let it never be said that Ed didn't pay well. I drove out of town before I could get tangled in any missing persons cases. Ed had given me plenty of experience in dealing with legal trouble. It's a massive pain in the butt. It's not like they were going to get that lady back anyways. Sitting in my new heated seat at a rest stop, I read the note. "Michael, congratulations. If you're reading this, then you are the second living proof that intraplanar travel is possible for a human. I hope the Lord of Ashes theatrics didn't scare you too badly. He's more or less at the absolute minimum level of power a demon needs to get their own realm, but he likes to act like, for the lack of a better term, like he's way bigger than he really is. Do make sure to follow up with him if he asked regarding whatever or whoever you paid to get back out. He was extremely displeased with how long you took to get there and let me out. If he didn't heal whatever burns you got from his associates, then I've got some ointment that you can use. If you'd like to continue helping me with this research, my new sponsor is prepared to pay $300K a year in full health benefits. The car is yours. I told Jake, or was it Jack, at the accounting firm that you died in a car crash, and I had to make it look realistic, so I borrowed your old one. Side note, avoid I-84 for a bit. There is a big wreck. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to ditch that office job. Head south from Dayton, Washington on Touche Road until you see a sign for a George's towing service yard. Turn left there and follow the dirt track for about 20 minutes and I'll find you. Ed. On one hand, I wasn't a big fan of the fact that Ed had been presumptuous enough to fake my death. On the other hand, I wasn't actually dead, and that was 6 times my current salary, and also heated seats. I turned the radio back to the religious station and I pulled back out onto the road.